Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Particle Accelerator Podcast, where we talk to future thinking business leaders about how to accelerate their business and grow their team. I'm here with Jeremy. Jeremy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, my name is Jeremy Wellman. I'm the CEO of Sweetfish Media, B2B video podcasting company. Been running the ship for a couple of years, and I like being referred to as a forward-thinking CEO, so I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit more about B2B podcasts. I'm just out of curiosity, really.
Yeah, so when you're forming a niche, there's a fundamentally different way that you would engage a B2C audience that you would for B2B. We originally got our start doing kind of like what you do here, where you form a one-to-one relationship with the guests by having them on your podcast, because rather than selling 3,000 candy bars to 3,000 people, you get to sell in B2B, you get to sell 3,000 candy bars to one person. So if you
Right.
develop that air of trust and you're able to take your candy bars to that one person, it's a lot easier. Also, in the B2B niche, there's a lot of opportunity to change the way you approach audiences. Rather than having to find 4 million people, you can go in and find 400,000 people who all represent a particular niche of people that you want to talk to. And so B2B podcasting for us initially was a way for us to have conversations like this and to drive deep fandom into our brand, and has expanded into video podcasting, which also allows us to take what originally was only an audio idiom and expand it into different places different places and platforms where video lives and does well.
Yeah. One of my good buddies, Greg Alexander, says the riches are in the niches.
It's true.
And if you build a good niche, you can there's just gold to be found there. Well, one of the ways I like to get to know my guests is I like to kind of discover where you've come from. And the way I ask that is, what was your first job? Like, how did you make your first dollar?
Oh, wow.
For me, it was a paper route. Getting up every morning, getting those papers delivered, going and collecting. What was it for you?
Well, I grew up in West Virginia, so there wasn't much of a paper route to be run, but I cut a lot of grass for my first dollar. My first, what I call FICA guy job, the one where you get the paycheck and you realize the government's taking most of your money,
Yep,
was
yeah.
Taco Bell. Yeah,
Taco
that was
Bell.
Taco
Okay.
Bell. Oh man, I think it was 5.25 an hour. And they take like 15%. Like, wait a minute, what is this? I didn't spend this. What is this? And then so the first person explains to you how taxes are taken out of your check. It's just a
Yeah,
wild moment.
that's cool. Well, what toy or hobby did you have as a child that inspired what you do career-wise today?
Oh man, that's tough. You know what? I grew up as a musician, so I wouldn't say that there was a particular toy that bridged directly into multimedia content creation, but probably my piano, and then my mom's push to play piano. I had an awesome piano teacher, and then I grew up playing music, picked up instrumental music in middle school, playing trumpet, went through college to be a music teacher. And definitely my path into music is what pushed me into multimedia creation in a number of different areas, mostly to fuel the music. And so, yeah, I cut my teeth doing a lot of executing things. It was just figure it out. And as I learned those things, it pushed me more and more into multimedia. And so when a friend of mine came and said, I'm starting a multimedia business. You want to help me out? I was like, yeah, I'm in. And so probably piano really bridged the gap. That's less of a toy, but it's kind of
No, that makes a lot of sense.
connect.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. A counselor once told me that we all have this desire in our relationships, and this goes for parenting and spouse and partners and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
we all want to be seen, loved, and heard, or seen, heard, and loved. And that wanting to be heard, man. When you're in multimedia, that there's something really cool about allowing people to be heard. You're kind of satisfying some like deep desire to be heard in the world, right? That's super
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, for sure.
What was your favorite and least favorite course in school?
Ooh, I mean, favorite course clearly was music. I really enjoyed English and writing. Um, Least favorite's probably math. My dad was an accountant and just insanely good at math. And so I don't know if I developed kind of a complex around not being super great at math like he was, but I just struggled to get concepts. When math goes from numbers and starts to get into letters and concepts and shapes, I
Yeah.
really started to struggle. And where, where that struggle wasn't present in some other places, I just really struggle with math. Great computation, just abstract gets me. And so I'd say probably math is my least favorite. And then English, writing, music, arts, electives.
Yeah. Creativity. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, what quote from a famous person lives in your mind rent free?
Ooh, that is a good one. Quote that lives in my mind rent free. Um, Ooh, that is tough. Let me think about that one for a second. That is so hard. I didn't think that question would be that hard. I'm not sure. I don't really have a quote that I go to on that, if I'm being real. And
Okay.
honestly, I don't quote as much as I thought I did, but
Yeah.
I paraphrase more than anything. And so,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I don't have one. Man, that's tough. Got me on that one.
Okay.
Stumped.
Cool. I'm glad I got you on your toes. Is there a guiding principle that you use, a guiding principle or a motto that you use to kind of guide you, drive your company, anything like that?
Yeah. Well, we talk a lot about 70/30 model. So anytime you come into a job, what you're doing in that job is probably about 30% of it is what really provides value in a way that only you and your role and your talent can provide. The other 70% are tedious tasks that have to get done by someone or something. And so one of the concepts that we talk a lot about is how do we flip those numbers to where at some point, as you improve at your job and identify your role and get further into it, how are you doing 70% of the work that you do is providing direct value in a way that only you, your time and talent can provide. And the other 30% becomes tedious and then even driving that down. So I think um, it speaks to knowing who you are, what you do, your role, and how you provide value to the business, even at the most base level inside of a company. And then trying to pick up more of that while shifting other things off, whether through, technology or um, helping to assign things to other people or cooperating with other people together to task them, but you want to stay inside of your zone of genius as often as possible. And so
Yeah.
that's a big guiding principle for me and for us.
Yeah. Totally get that. We talk about as kind of depending on your level, you need to have a certain margin where you're working on your profession rather than in your profession. So we use this
Yeah.
on versus in paradigm. And like and I just read the book, The One Thing, and he talks a lot about, leading people to being strategic, like thinking like, what is that one thing that I want to do to make what I do either directly relate to hitting goals or make it easier to hit goals in the future.
Yeah.
So like totally get that one. That's awesome. Um, what do you think the greatest invention or discovery in the past 300 years has been?
Oh, greatest invention in the past 300 years. Maybe is it 300 years? The combustion engine inside of 300 years? It's got to be, right?
For sure.
Combustion engine. I'd say that's probably the greatest invention. The other things that popped to my mind are cotton gin but that's also a form of an engine. So yeah, I'd say probably the combustion engine.
For
Uh,
sure.
the birth control pill. I think. I mean, think about how much that freed up just in, that fundamentally altered the way that societal contracts are formed. Like that's a pretty big one.
It's huge. Cool. Well, I'll get into the more substantive stuff here or the meat of the episode. What tech trends significantly impacted you or your industry, and how has your company responded?
I mean, is AI too broad of a term? Uh,
It often comes up when I ask this question,
yeah, I was
believe
about
it or
to say.
not.
So I think specifically um, audio music editing AI software massively impacted us because before it had to be done very manually and very tediously. All of
Yeah.
a sudden AI can get you 50 to 80% of the way there, depending on what you do. I would say that statistic refers specifically to podcasting. I mean, AI is not cutting singles yet, but they will be. But I think that where they hit us hard was there. And then also content creation. It's getting increasingly difficult to tell the difference between AI and actual people creating the content. And that doesn't mean that AI gets rid of people who create great content. It means that AI becomes the new sword that slices through anybody that's not creating great content in a niche. And so you're not going to be able to tell the difference between mediocre and bad content and AI content. So you really have to rise to the top. And so in one way, it pushes us into our A game, and the other way, that forcing function is really hard for any company who creates content.
Yeah, I totally agree. We just started leveraging Podcastle for the sound editing, and it just like, the two recordings, lay them over, you get an amazing, just immediate, like, sounds good, tones start to match. Love that.
Descript has a powerful platform, and then also Adobe Podcast is sneaking up in there, and everybody's got their flavor of AI now, and it's all very, very good.
And I just saw it's really like an open library for, they call it Deep Face, but it's really it's almost like a platform or a package. I just started looking at it like an hour ago, but it's like you want to look like Robert Downey Jr. and do something on video. It's got all that stuff. And just the world of not being able to tell real versus fake. It shows a lady kind of grabbing at her skin, and it's what I saw was the real person, and then the other person, like how they were being presented. And so this is way beyond the whole Kardashian filter that's in Zoom. But this is actually like, I don't know, it's getting pretty interesting, scary, insert adjective here.
Yeah, scary, weird out there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. We're going a little bit beyond I am not a cat to some.
Yeah. Lawyers getting stuck with their filters, and now we're trying to decide if this is Tom Cruise for real or not. Yeah.
That's right. Well, what are some technology innovations that you are betting on to drive your future business growth?
I mean, there's kind of the same overlap there. I mean, audio editing, content creation, I think very specifically some budgeting technologies that help us spend less time in the cash flow books and more time in the content creation. I don't view AI in particular as an enemy in this space. I view it as an opportunity. It's not about replacing what we do. It's about being able to take that and use it for what we used to do and expand, right? So like, used to, you had a horse-drawn carriage. Then when you got a car, it's not like all the jobs went away. You needed drivers, right? And you need other things. So I think AI and what it drives and what it can do for us that we no longer have to do for ourselves presents a significant opportunity in podcasting and video creation in particular. You're just going to have to adjust to the new normal and figure out how that best serves you and what's the best way to appeal to your audience without being what I call stinky marketers, where it's like you're just trying to fake everything, right? What's the new way to provide great value that involves using AI to make this work, as opposed to just, being able to ship things over and over again? What's the real value?
Yeah. Well, what gaps do you think exist between like what you're trying to accomplish and the realities of today?
Finances are a big one. My company specializes in content creation, so building AI platforms and coding and that sort of thing is not something that is a talent of ours, and so you have to have somebody else to do it. So where do you get that funding whenever you're a particularly bootstrapped company or one that doesn't go through funding? You have to find other ways to do that. I think that's one. Two is adoption. Even once someone's fully bought into using tech, there's that learning curve that you both have to have time for, but then also don't really have time for. And you get in this very difficult race to the front where other people are trying to learn this as well. And you have to try and be either at least competitive in the race. And then I think three is probably watching redundancies and overlaps where you're potentially relying too heavily on technology and you lose your humanity a little bit in the process, where, everything starts to be systematic. It becomes a chop shop again. Everything's commodity and you're losing what originally made your content magic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that is the more we depend on technology, the like here I'm probably dating myself, but there was a role-playing game called Shadowrun back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And in the game you could buy certain enhancements, the lore was kind of cybernetic enhancements
Yeah. Yeah.
to enhance you, but as you would enhance yourself with technology, you'd lose your humanity, you'd become more
Oh,
sympathetic.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so like that dichotomy has existed in science fiction for a long time, and I think we're
Oh,
seeing
yeah.
it play out. The more, to some extent, the more automated your business becomes or your brand becomes, the less
Yeah.
personable it may be. And like
That's
what's
true.
the balance there?
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys figured out some sort of balance between the AI automation to help you and how you make it personable?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun too because particularly Chat GPT and a lot of AIs, and I know that eventually this won't be the case if it's not already not the case, but they're going to go get on Google and basically do your Google job for you. And I don't remember. Do you remember those old commercials where they would have these two people talking and they'd ask a question and the person would just start rattling off statistics, kind of like a robot, and then they were like, are your people being taken over by Google kind of thing? I think that's the fundamental thing we find with AI is like you can't just ask it a question and let it go and then send that on. You have to have somebody there now to look at it and be like, fact check it. Is this right? Or is it just pulling things from Google like any person would? And so I think the balance we've struck is finding ways to use it to get ourselves 80% of the way there as insights and as a tool, but then also having that human touch where we're going, okay, well, this is not, we don't want this, we don't want this. This is actually what we don't trust AI as the end all of all. So there's balance there. I mean, and you got to look in, I think particularly companies who do digital media have a little bit of an advantage with the mindset here because we've been using digital tools for so long where they used to be analog, right? The whole cut and print film used to be off of a straight reel to reel, and now it's a digital imaging technician that does it. And so I would say the content creators out there have always been people who adopted technology well. Shout out to my audio engineers who are plug-in geniuses. They've been doing this for forever. So I think the balance there is find ways to use it to propel you forward and make you even better at your craft instead of just trying to worry about it replacing you doing the same old thing.
Yeah, my both my oldest sons are in college.
Yeah.
So they're getting assignments to write papers, and they're kind of struggling with this idea of like, well, AI is there as almost the calculator to support my writing.
Right.
Um, and my one of my sons came back with what he has found is that I'll go ahead and write my paper with all my original thought. I'll put the paragraphs together myself. I am writing the paper, and then he's putting it through Claude to revise it. So he's using the keyword revise. Don't rewrite, please revise this for me. And then his marks are super high because all of his grammatical structure is correct.
Yeah.
But he's kind of
Yeah.
found that sweet spot. Whereas his peers are putting their ideas in the GPT, and then it's creating, something kind of artificial. And then of course, then that's detected and in some cases unethical, right? In the way that secondary education is trying to deal with this new era.
Yeah.
So just like real world happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the old, and this may date me, but back in college, you had, when you were writing papers, there's one point where I had two English classes and then one music history class. And I had to do MLA format for one, Turabian for one, and APA for the other. And so citation generators were such a big thing. And the universities were always trying to restrict the use of citation generations on their servers so that you couldn't just go plug it in and get their citation out. You had to actually do it manually. And so it's just funny to see that exact same concept like 20 years ago. And now here we are with ChatGPT with, how much do we need to require humans to do this thing if it becomes obsolete? It's like you said, the eternal calculator question.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, what's the biggest challenge for you maintaining your competitive edge in your industry?
Ooh, let's see. From a technology standpoint, I think so it's a burning a candle at both ends problem. Um, one I can solve and the other one I can't. So on one side, the one I can't solve are potential clients' appreciation of what it takes to make great content rather than just having a production partner that put things out there, right? And also appreciation. So I run an agency, so it's a little different for an agency versus an in-house team, like trusting the advice of the agency on those things. Now, on the opposite end of that, burning the candle at the other end, the one I have more control over is trying to find ways to create content that is the best in B2B. I want to be in the top 1 to 3% of B2B content, and doing it in a way that transcends what AI and these things could put out on their own, while simultaneously using AI to do it. And so that endeavor can't be so cost prohibitive that I charge my clients far more than my competitors to do that job, but it also is always going to be a little more expensive. So I think finding 3 balances is the most important thing. One is the balance of cost to spend, so we have efficiency, so we don't charge our clients too much. The other one is having a good balance of use of AI versus human interaction and trying to make sure we're driving the right thing. We're staying on the forefront of thought instead of being a Google machine. And then the third one is having a strategy that is constantly adapting ahead of trends in order to make those first 2 play out in the most efficient way once it actually becomes produced and goes out into the world. So I think those are the 3.
Yeah, that's so good. I worked with, for my own business, I worked with I found out what marketer my competitors were using and started talking to them and like, hey, I need brand messaging and all of these things.
Yeah.
So I paid for that. I got that project. I was looking at that copy, and sure, it was describing my business quite well. And then I read Donald Miller's Story Brand. And I was like, oh shoot, it's all wrong. Like everything I just invested in is all wrong because it's not speaking directly to my ICP. It's describing my business well with we and our, and kind of making me the hero of the story, because that's what the marketer wanted to do, was make me the hero of the story. And then Donald Miller is like, well, wait a minute, your customer is the hero and you're the guide. And, you'll know you've gotten it when your messaging is you and talking to your customer. And I was like, oh, great. Like these guiding principles, they make all the difference.
Well, strategy trumps story in some sense, right? So what's a good story? Well, a good story has a lot to do with, what you're trying to tell at the end, right? Like depending on your product, maybe you do need to be the hero, but depending on what you're selling, maybe your client needs to be the hero. But depending on which strategy you go with will determine what story you tell. And that's why the strategic decisions are so hard. It's like in B2B, do I do a content-based networking show where I'm bringing my guests on my show to do one-on-one personal relationships so that I can sell deals that way? Or am I trying to do a co-hosted commentary style where I bring on another guest and develop some personality-led content so I can appeal to more people inside the vertical that I'm trying to reach, inside that niche, right? And you can't always do both. You can do some little bit of overlap, but one strategy will seem like it's genius to someone who's adopted that strategy and foolishness to the person who's doing the other strategy, and vice versa. And that's huge. That's really big.
Cool. Well, what lessons have you learned from an initiative that failed to deliver the expected value?
Oh, man, I remember when we tried to build a software that would select micro video, like snippets, out of a long form thing, and we had gotten in bed with this software development company, and we were trying to do it, and man, it was 3 steps forward and 2 steps back constantly. And then, breaking things and having to pay for what we broke and then asking for whatever else. It was hands down the most defeating experience that I ever had. And I realized that for me, at least, I'm not saying everybody has to do this, but I think what I learned is stay in your lane and have expertise. And if you ever go to try and develop something like that, you need to pull in a team of experts rather than throwing, your entire initiative on somebody else who is not on your team, is just, external to your team. And then also, there are better uses of my time than trying to develop software, because I'm not a software.
Sure. Yeah, we see that a lot. The idea of, I've started to see some literature around, because oftentimes I'll have service-based companies come and talk about a product that they want to build, And then what that ends up doing to their, so then they're neither, they'll start using their margin from their services business to invest in their product.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of amalgamates, right? So then if they want to do something fun with like sell or exit their services business, it just looks like an unprofitable services business. And then you're then if you're successful in building the product, then you're trying to market both your service and your product. And so your marketing budget doubles or triples. And so kind of knowing whether you're a service business or a product business is one of like the first questions I ask, right? Because they're two very different things. I think there's a graveyard of service SaaS businesses or businesses that tried to do both, build a product and offer a service. And I think that those are one of the like lanes that I think you need to choose.
Yeah. Well, and I think my problem, maybe I want to re-articulate that, like, I don't ever want to tell somebody to stay in their lane. I just want to tell people one lane at a time. Go in whatever lane you want to go in, but stay in one at a time. And that's the mistake I made. I was all over the road trying to do things that I had no business doing. It was crazy.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't like the term "stay in your lane." I think the practical advice was like, then you are starting two businesses. Like you have a product company over here, and you need to get that invested in and have stakeholders of that product business, and then you're like keep those two separate so that you're not intermixing a P&L and trying to get people to understand that there's two halves of a single thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, how do you cultivate culture? Just the culture of innovation and digital fluency within your organization.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've heard people answer this question a lot, and they lead with all the wonderful things they did. I think the first step is hiring the right people. And I don't mean that there's a right type of person, a wrong type of person. I mean that for your business and for your culture, for what you're trying to achieve and what you do, make sure you're taking steps during the hiring process as much as you can to also interview for culture fits. Because if you don't, though, you'll end up with a lot of talented people who don't get along. And that's really destructive to your culture. And so I've seen a lot of people that will bring on folk who are not culture fits. And because they're talented, they want to bring them on. And then you end up fighting that tension the whole time. I think maintaining culture is a lot about setting as clear expectations as you can, even if that expectation sometimes is one of chaos. You know, I tell people when they come through the gate at Sweetfish, this is a small business and we have small business problems. Generally speaking, business is problems. And so you're a problem solver here to solve those problems and help us solve those problems. And we're all problem solving together. So if you're walking into a small business expecting that we're going to have all of our SOPs in a row and all of our processes are going to run like this, and there's a person for accounting and there's a person for HR, and there's a person for, there just aren't that many people on the team, right? So we're going to have to deal with the fact that little chaos is going to ensue, and solving problems is an opportunity to rise amongst the chaos. There's a quote for you. Chaos is a ladder, little figure from Game of Thrones, but sorry.
I love it.
That one occurred to me, but yeah, I think maybe even expectations isn't the great word. I think it's just a nice gut check of exactly what someone's walking into, especially if they've never been in a small business or they're coming from a large corporate setting into a small business. And I tell my people when they come through the gate too, we don't have space on the team for Bill that sits in the basement and sends 3 emails and then goes home for the day and just nobody ever notices him. Like, I got to fill an A-player team. I've got, 13 to 20 spots, and they've got to all be doing something. They're all going to be maxed out because that's the nature of the business of a small business. And so, and then I think also like letting the people that you've hired that are great fits intermingle and let them run a lot of the culture for you, and don't micromanage and be big brother trying to force culture to go somewhere it doesn't go. Just let great people be great people and foster that, support that.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like every CEO has this badge of honor around hiring a wrong person at least once to get that lesson embedded. I know it's happened for me, and great people that just weren't stage appropriate for where we were at. And I think that's a great guy.
And an addendum to that too, like, and this always comes across as savage. I don't necessarily mean for it to be, but the reality is you're gonna hire some people that just aren't fits. It's inevitable. But I think that we take too long to correct that. Sometimes you need to come in and say, hey, listen, this is not a good fit. It's time to let go. I didn't come up with the idea, but hire fast, fire fast is kind of where I sit, where if somebody comes in and they've proven to you, they're throwing up all these yellow flags and it's just not a good fit, even if they're talented, sometimes especially if they're talented, because you come to learn to depend on that talent, but you can't really stomach what's happening to your company culture. It could be time to let them go, and you have to make that decision, and you have to have managers that will make those decisions, and they always suck. There's no way around it. Like letting someone go is always a miserable experience. There's no part of it that's like, man, we love this is great. No, it's all terrible, but it has to be made, because you're not just sacrificing what that person's doing, you're sacrificing their team. If you have a small team, you could be sacrificing the entire company. And candidly, when you have somebody coming in that's a low performer because they're in that spot, everybody else sees that, and they're not typically rising above that. They're typically getting drawn down by it and being demotivated and crushed by it. And so sometimes, taking that step to say this is not a good fit and seeing that person on to the next opportunity where they will be a good fit is the best thing you can do for your company.
Yeah, I totally agree with that last part there. Like, I've parted ways with a few people in the various businesses that I've started in the past, and to see what they go do after, really like to withhold that future possibility where they are a good fit and things are kind of falling in place and they feel a little bit more purposeful. Like that is also, something to consider as you're dreading the next step of making a decision and kind of setting them free to go figure that out. So it's not always, it does always suck, but it's not necessarily, if it's the right thing, it could be the right thing for both parties.
That's right. I agree.
Cool. Well, what experience would you share or advice would you give to people who are just beginning their digital transformation journey or their career in the digital space?
Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid of it, but have respect for it, I think is where I would sit. A lot of people become very risk averse when it comes to technology. They're afraid the things they try are going to take them, and I disagree with that. I'm also not the person that says when you're running the ship that you need to go take massive risks either, but it's your job to take very calculated risks, and you're not going to be able to do that outside of technology. So embrace the journey, embrace a little bit of the chaos and the kind of the nature of the unknown, because we don't really know where technology goes. We're kind of watching it pass us by. The second thing I would say is be a sponge. Like, try and learn as much about this thing as you can. And especially if you're a business leader and you're just diving into this, this digital world or trying to transform your company through digital, you need to do what I recommend in the 70-30 and start handing off some things to other very talented team members that can take care of those things so you can focus on leading through that digital transformation. It doesn't have to be that way forever, but if you're not willing to set aside the time and dive in with everybody to do that, you're going to be chasing your tail. You're going to be along for the ride instead of piloting the ship. And I think it's more important for you as a leader to be involved in that process.
Yeah, totally. I see as I offer clarity to my team. And as people get clarity with like, what is their vision? A lot of times we conflate vision and goals. Yeah. But our vision is that thing on the horizon. Like if I picture my life 10 years from now, what do I want my life to look like? And taking a little time to allow your teammates to do that, doing that for yourself, and then figuring out the destinations. Because a lot of times we're disillusioned that, well, if I hit that next goal, then I will be where I want, rather than kind of putting the horizon or the North Star before the plan to get there. The accomplishments are not the destination. The accomplishments are just stops along the way.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the nature of vision. It's always tomorrow. You never fully get there. You can arrive at those accomplishments, but you never really, because you'll just have another vision for another 10 years.
Right, for sure. Well, cool. If people like what you've had to share today, how should they connect with you?
Yeah, you can reach out to me in email, jeremy@sweetfishmedia.com, or hit me up on LinkedIn, just linkedin.com/Jeremy Wellman. I'm always sitting around there somewhere. Just look for the look for the beard and the glasses, and I'll be there.
Cool, man. Well, it's great to talk to you and catch up with you and get to know you a little bit. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you reaching out and glad to be here.